Welcome back into the Arrowhead Pride Rapid Reaction Show. I am Steven Serda, joined as always by Rocky Magaña, Kramer Sansone in the background, helping us keep this thing moving here tonight. Kansas City Chiefs fall on Sunday Night Football to the Green Bay Packers, 27-19, and it's about as frustrating a game I think that the Chiefs have played all season. Maybe I'm just annoyed right now and acting frustrated, Rocky. Some of that is on the officiating, which I think was absolute garbage, especially in the fourth quarter of this game, but also just a really, really big letdown performance by the Kansas City Chiefs. And we'll get into everything. There was a lot of injuries tonight that were getting stacked up in Green Bay. I know this Packers team is young and surging right now and playing really well. And I think they were really impressive tonight against the Kansas City Chiefs. But at the end of the day, I just don't think that we got the greatest of efforts from the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday night. And it showed up in the fact that they only put up 19 points at Lambeau Field against a defense that they should have been able to win some matchups on Sunday night, and they just do not get it done.
Yeah, a lot of stuff not to like in this game. We should have known coming into this game that the football gods were feeling salty when everything that happened to FSU today. We should have known that the football gods were like, you know what, we're just going to throw chaos in the mix and just screw some people over. Um, Before we go any further, though, I'd like to say Mitch Holthus, Kansas City legend, missed his first game ever in the history of his career today because he's out with COVID back home. So get well soon, Mitch. We love you. You're the GOAT. You're the greatest of all time. So I'd get that off my chest first and foremost. Secondly, man, once the defenders started dropping like flies from the start of the game, Drew Tranquil, and then a nasty injury to Brian Cook. Like you just had that inkling that this was going to be one of those nights where it just wasn't our night. I'm not going to put this on the refs because we didn't play well enough to win the game. Was it a bad call? Sure, but that's not why we lost the game. We lost the game because we couldn't get off the field in the first half. And then when we finally got them off the field in the second half, we went 3 and out. Like that was the crucial drive right there when the Chiefs went 3 and out and had the ball for less than a minute. Like we needed points on that drive. So there's a lot of reasons why we lost this game. It was a BS call. It was a terrible miss. The Chiefs aren't paying the refs, apparently, like everybody thinks. So
Not if you
that's
watch
good.
this game.
That's good to know that we're not actually paying the refs off like Texas boosters are paying off the college football selection committee. Not my lane. I know, not our venue. I'll stay off that soapbox. But that being said, there's a lot of reasons why we lost this game, and it's not because of the refs.
It's just, and I'm not going to get into the ref stuff too much either. I think, the roughing the passer call on Patrick Mahomes on the sideline, I don't think that should have been a flag. I already made that known on my Twitter account. But also the MVS play downfield should have been a flag. But then I also think that the following play where MVS makes a catch on the sideline and is desperately trying to get out of bounds, where he's clearly stopped and his forward progress was clearly stopped before he got out of bounds. Like that should have been a rolling clock, and it wasn't. Like the referee thing, like it's bad everywhere. We see how garbage these guys are on a weekly basis. It's bad across the entire NFL, and we see this every single week. We see these guys impact the outcome of games. But I totally agree with you, Rocky. Like this wasn't even that tonight. So I'm not trying to have that conversation whatsoever because the Chiefs just simply did not deserve to win this football game. And I think I want to start on the defensive side of the ball because you mentioned the injuries. Drew Tranquil left this game with a concussion on the first drive of the game. Just took a huge, fat A.J. Dillon knee straight to the helmet and was immediately knocked out. That's obviously could be a huge injury moving forward for the Chiefs. Nick Bolton was at practice this week. They activated his 21-day window. So it seems like Nick Bolton's got a chance of coming back here in the near future, but not necessarily maybe this week if Drew Tranquil can't go because of the concussion. And it's been much harder to clear the NFL's concussion protocol in 1 week this season. So I would not be surprised if Drew Tranquill is out next week. Donovan Smith also left the game with a neck injury, and we saw a lot of Wanye Morris tonight. Safety Brian Cook, you mentioned, had the ugly looking ankle injury, and it seems like Brian Cook is set to miss significant time now for the Kansas City Chiefs, which is another huge blow to the defense. Because, you know, I know Cook isn't somebody that we've paid a ton of attention to this season for the Chiefs defense, but he's having a really strong second year in that secondary and had become a really important role player, I think, for the Chiefs that just probably wasn't getting enough praise. So that's something you obviously hate to see. But, you know, injuries considered here, Rocky, I think that the Chiefs defense did kind of let us down tonight. And I think it was an incredible game plan by the Green Bay Packers and Matt LaFleur, who is one of the best play callers in the league right now. I think he is a really great offensive-minded head coach who is really developing and getting a lot out of this incredibly young Green Bay Packers team. As we're seeing, they are absolutely rolling right now. And their offense was giving the Chiefs fits all night long tonight. And I don't think it was that I don't think that it was that different from what the Las Vegas Raiders did to the Chiefs last week, Rocky. I think it was a lot of the same quick sideline throws, quick in stuff, quick runs, hurry up offense, like get to the field and keep the Chiefs on their toes and make it hard to blitz, make it hard to come after Jordan Love, and make it hard to generate that extra pressure if your defensive line isn't winning, which the defensive line was not winning a ton tonight. They did get some pressure, got some sacks late in the game, but overall, I expected the Chiefs defensive line to win a lot more against this young Packers offensive line than I think they did tonight. And it was just a good game plan that I think kind of started last week in that first quarter against the Raiders. And at the end of the day, the Raiders are the Raiders. And this Green Bay Packers team is a genuinely talented young team that was able to put that together for an entire game. And it was super effective all night against the Chiefs defense, injuries, you know, being taken into account and everything. I just think that the Packers had a great game plan and they executed it all night long against the Chiefs.
Yeah, 100%. They came up with a great game plan. I think that they wanted to power run the ball between the tackles with Dylan before Drew Tranquill went down. And the second that they saw Jack Cochran in there instead of Drew Tranquill, they were like, "We're playing with house money right now, baby. Like we're gonna double down on this, and we're gonna use the run to set up the pass, and we're gonna make them pack the box to try to stop the run, and then we're gonna beat them over the top." And I think that this is one of the few times where you see a significant home field advantage to a team where it's not based on the crowd. Like the turf today was low key pretty terrible out there. There you saw players slipping all over the place.
Yeah.
But you didn't see the Green Bay Packers slipping nearly as much as the Chiefs because they're used to it. Like they play on that field all the time. They're used to the slippery grass. And you saw that the Chiefs were losing their footing. There was that play where you saw Jordan Love just like throw the ball a mile into the air and just it fell like a lollipop. Was it into Romeo Dobbs's arms? I think it was. And we had three defenders there, but Mike Edwards was slipping, falling on his butt. You know, he was out of position to make the play because he lost his footing. Brian Cook got hurt because he lost his footing. Like, I mean, the Chiefs players you saw all night long just couldn't stay on their feet. And then that being said, you know that Spagnuolo had to cross some things off the call sheet with Jack Cochran in the game. You don't have your whole playbook available
Not
to
where you
you.
want to be.
Like you cannot underestimate how big of a blow losing Drew Tranquill was, you know, that especially that early in the game. And it changes the entire way that you call the defense. And I wrote an article on the website this week talking about how Drew Tranquill was the perfect substitute linebacker because they didn't have to change the call sheet when Nick Bolton went out. He knew the whole playbook. He can play the whole playbook. But Jack Cochran is not Nick Bolton, and Jack Cochran is not Drew Tranquill. And having him as your starting Mike linebacker significantly changes your entire defense. And then on top of that, you lose Brian Cook, who's could be a box defender, or he's your single high back guy when you have Justin Reed down. And now all of a sudden, you've not just gotten softer at one level up the middle, but at both levels. You know what I mean? And so, I mean, so then it's 100% on the defensive line to stop them at the first level, because if they don't, you have you have a compromised second level and third level on the back end. I mean, and so it's no wonder that they were able to run it on us tonight. I'm not breaking glass in case of emergency in this game. I feel more optimistic in this loss than other ones, honestly, because I put it more on the turf and on the injuries. There was a lot of mistakes that need to be cleaned up. They didn't play their best football. Um, but I think that is this the best Chiefs team we've seen in a while? No. Is this defense still really good? Yes. Do they need to get healthy on defense? Sure. Um, but I don't know. I feel better about this loss than I did about the Denver loss. That's for sure.
And we'll get into the offense, obviously. I also want to mention that Isaiah Pacheco was ejected from this game for throwing a punch late in the fourth quarter. I think that just kind of puts a bow on what a frustrating night it was for the Chiefs. Obviously, Pacheco can't do that late in the game, especially he's having a monster game and it was really the best thing on offense for the Chiefs all night long. And so for them not to have him out there late in the game, I think that matters. But defensively, like, I almost feel bad for the Chiefs right now because, Drew Tranquill goes out and maybe this is a different game if Drew Tranquill doesn't go out. Like I mentioned, it was on the opening drive and that's a 13 play, 75-yard scoring drive for the Green Bay Packers to open up the night. Like I think that they would have had a little bit more resistance on some of these end arounds and reverses and sweeps that they were running to like a ton of success all night long, because that's where Drew Tranquill usually is. And we saw Willie Gay make some plays in that regard, but that's what Drew Tranquill does. That's what Nick Bolton does. Like those are guys that you need on the field for that kind of stuff. And you're totally right, Rocky, about Brian Cook and what he can do around the line of scrimmage and the way that they've utilized him at times this year. Like that's a big difference, him going down in this game and not being available to do that stuff. I just think the offense has gone through so much this season and there's been so much, well, it's growing pains. They're developing. And the defense continues to be leaned on and leaned on and leaned on. And they just couldn't come up with it tonight. They couldn't settle down and they couldn't do it. And this is 2 games in a row now where we've seen kind of similar style game plans to slow down the Chiefs defense and just say, well, we don't care how much time we take off the clock. We'll take 9 minutes off the clock if we get in the end zone. And if we tire you guys out because we ran 13 to 15 plays on the way to the end zone, like, that's going to be the game plan moving forward because teams are finding success now against the Chiefs. So now it's really on Spags, who has been brilliant all season with this group. It's on him to kind of fine tune some things and make some adjustments. And maybe Nick Bolton will be back next week. We'll obviously pay attention to that at arrowheadpride.com. But as banged up as they are coming out of this game, and you had an opportunity here to control your own destiny. If you win tonight, as of tomorrow morning, you're atop the AFC again. And all you got to do is win out. And Baltimore's got a very tough schedule ahead. So it's totally possible that Baltimore, drops a game now and the Chiefs still win everything the rest of the way and still wind up with the number 1 overall seed in the AFC. And then all of this concern doesn't really matter because it still comes through Arrowhead in the playoffs. But they did make it harder tonight by not showing up in Green Bay, by not showing up and dominating this young Packers team the way that I thought they should. And I still think the Chiefs are one of the absolute best teams in the NFL. But if the defense is banged up and if the defense isn't playing like it's one of the most elite units in the NFL, it's perfectly reasonable at this point in the season to just have no faith in the offense and be like, this offense isn't going to get it done. Because right now what we're seeing, it's really frustrating that we keep having to go do this every couple of games where it's like, stop throwing at MVS, stop throwing at Sky Moore. Like, what are we doing here? Richie James looked better than Sky did tonight. Rashee Rice, Travis Kelce, and Isaiah Pacheco is how you win on offense for the Chiefs. And they're going away from it too often. And they did it tonight with Rashee Rice more than anything else. Isaiah Pacheco had a nice game. Travis Kelce had a nice game. But I kept seeing Rashee Rice come off the field in key moments. And that should not be happening, Rocky, because the other guys that they're leaving out there aren't getting the job done. And they basically just become liabilities.
Rashee Rice, Isaiah Pacheco, and Travis Kelce should not come off the field unless you're in a 10-play drive and they're gassed. And then at that point, you should pull them off halfway through so that they're not gassed in the red zone because you're going to need them. Mahomes is interception was a bad decision, bad throw. But the worst decision he made on that play wasn't to throw the ball over there into that coverage. It was to throw the ball to Sky Moore and have any faith whatsoever that he had any sort of contested ball skills to go up and make that catch. Sky Moore has shown you time and time again that he's a 5'10". What they played in the MAC, I think it was the MAC conference, MAC wide receiver who may be fast in straight line speed, but has zero vertical skills. He cannot jump. And so you put him in a situation where it's going to be a contested catch. He's losing that. He's losing that catch 11 times out of 10. Like, you know what I mean? So Mahomes has to know better in that moment. He has to know who he's throwing to. Like if it's Kadarius Toney, I even feel better about throwing that pass to Kadarius Toney because Kadarius Toney has better ball skills on contested catches than Sky Moore does. And Sky Moore, I mean, Justin Watson, we didn't see on the field today, thank God, because Justin Watson hasn't been playing well. We still saw a little bit too much of MVS. I think your offense goes through Rashee Rice, Isaiah Pacheco, and Travis Kelce, and then you sprinkle in Kadarius Toney and Richie James where you can. It's the most limited this Chiefs offense has ever been. They have the smallest margin for error that they've had in the Reed era, and that's including some of the Alex Smith teams. That's including the year they didn't throw a single touchdown to a wide receiver. I think you know what I mean. And it's like Travis Kelce's going to have 1,000 yards again this year, but it's safe to say that he's lost a step. Like let's just be honest. He's still one of the best tight ends in football, but he's lost a step. He's not as fast as he used to be. He's still savvy. He's still a great player, but we're at that point now in the season where we are officially 12 games into the season. These are the dog days of a long schedule. This is where you're gonna lose games because players are injured. You're going to have bad games. It gets cold. It's getting cold. Every hit it feels harder. The ground's harder. It's more brittle. You don't want to be out there. This is where the gut checks really start to play in these football games, and the Chiefs just didn't have it on a cold night in Lambeau tonight.
I do agree with you that it looks like Travis Kelce is slowing down. Like it does look like he has lost a step. There's been some plays recently where, it might be a 20-yard gain, but I remember when that was a 40-yard gain, and it just doesn't seem like he's got the same burst that he used to. But I also think that it's worth asking the question if he just hasn't been 100% healthy all season after having the hyperextended knee ahead of week 1. And then we've just kind of seen him get banged up here and there. And like you mentioned, Rocky, like it's that time of the year. It's getting tough out there. It's getting cold. Like there's a reason every year there's guys that their play declines once we get into December because it's a hard time of year to play football games. And there was a play tonight where Kelce makes a big catch, big gain, gets up immediately, kind of just like hobbling, limping around, and works his way over to the sideline. Like, and it feels like we've seen a lot of that lately from him. Like he's just got some things that are probably piling up, and he's getting up there in age, but he's still really good. He still just like is winning because his football IQ is just higher than almost everybody else on the field. The problem, and what continues to be the biggest issue for the Kansas City Chiefs, and where they're obviously lacking, is the lack of development from the other pass catchers. Like Rashee Rice continues to show all the promise, but you mentioned Sky Moore on that interception. I totally agree with you. Mahomes should not make that throw, but Mahomes is putting it in the spot where Sky Moore is supposed to be. And if you go back and watch that replay, you see this from Sky all the time. He turns to look where the ball's at and basically just stops running. And so Mahomes is throwing it with anticipation, thinking he's supposed to be in this spot. That's where I'm throwing it. But Sky turns to look for the football and totally stops, basically, and then has to speed up and try to catch up. And it's picked off because the defender just has nobody around him to break up the pass. And MVS, like, I think he should have gotten a flag like that. That should have been defensive pass interference. But then Mahomes, a few plays later, takes that shot to the end zone where it's double coverage. MVS has no chance of making the play. But you can also see where MVS slows up on the route. And we see MVS do that like every week. We see Justin Watson do that stuff. Like these are things that these guys just aren't getting better at. And sure, maybe there is going to be some microscopic improvements as the season goes on. I think that we have seen some improvements from them offensively the last 2 games, with leaning into Isaiah Pacheco, leaning into Sky Moore a little bit more, and trying to get Travis Kelce involved. But at the end of the day, I just don't know if that's going to be enough, because you got those guys is the only guys that are really contributing anything to your offense this season. And then everybody else is just totally unreliable and simply becoming liabilities. And I'd be really interested in going back this season and looking at all of the Chiefs turnovers, Patrick Mahomes interceptions, whatever, and saying, like, how many times was it actually on Mahomes? Like, how many times can you see in the route where the guy slows up, or the guy doesn't finish off his route, or he doesn't go to the spot that he's supposed to be, and Mahomes is throwing it to that spot? Because that's why he's been so effective for so long. And he just doesn't have anybody who's doing any of that stuff this year. And for the first time, I think this season, I'm legitimately questioning if this offense is ever going to be good enough this year to win in the postseason. I think the defense can get you there, but you need your defense to go on like a historical playoff run, like we saw the Denver Broncos do, or like we've seen other defenses do in the past. And if they're this banged up this late in the year, I don't know if they're going to be able to do that, because I have very little faith. I messaged you right before the final drive, and I was texting with Ron and Brandon Kiley a little bit too. And it's like, I think I'm at like a 3 right now out of 10 as far as faith in the Chiefs offense goes on this drive. And is pretty much exactly how it went. Like, yeah, never really had a real chance of scoring. Never really had a real, like, any kind of like hurry, like you were really testing the Packers, and a couple of super questionable play decisions. Like, it's just not a threatening unit, and I'm struggling to see a direction anymore where it truly gets better, to where it can actually be something that we can rely upon again on a weekly basis.
Oh, 100%. I think on the Sky Moore interception in particular, if you looked at Mahomes' face when he was walking off the field, like, he didn't want to yell at Sky Moore for the interception, but you saw him look over at Reed on the sideline. He was just
Yeah.
like, really, man? Like,
He's
really?
like, I'm putting it where
Like
it's supposed to be.
what am
Like,
I supposed to do with this? Like he
and
just stops running. He
well,
can't make a play on the like.
and Rocky, like, so I had somebody ask me, like, well, like, how do we know that it's not Mahomes misreading this and it's the wide receivers? Because it seems to be happening with the wide receivers all the time. It's like, because Mahomes gets the benefit of the doubt. Like, because Mahomes has made it work with everybody he's ever played with. This is the first time it's not working ever. So the communication is lacking, and I'm going to give Mahomes the benefit of the doubt that he knows where that guy's supposed to wind up on his route.
Yeah, I mean, Mahomes has 3 Super Bowl appearances, 2 rings, 2 MVPs. Like, Mahomes has made it work with Demarcus Robinson and Byron Pringle. You know, like, we're not asking to have a room full of Tyreek Hills here. You know what I mean? We're asking these guys to be role players, period, and they're not role level players even. And it's hard to watch sometimes. I mean, to be honest, especially given, what we're used to out of this offensive unit. I do agree with you. I think that MVS slowed down on that last route when I think maybe he was gassed, but at the same time, it's the end of the game, man. Dig deep and make a play, for God's sake. Like this offense, like, here's the difference with this offense in the past and this offense now. Think about the 13-second game, right? Like, this offense put pressure on the defense. Like, there was a constant pressure put on the defense to stop this offense, and they were constantly pushing downstream against the defense, and the defense was almost felt like they were trying to hold back the dam, right? Like, right now, it seems like you're just like shooting a BB at a brick wall with this offense, and there's no pressure on the defense whatsoever. It's like stagnant, and then trying to move forward a few yards, stop, move forward a few yards. There's no real rhythm. There's no real momentum to this offense outside of the occasional, nice run by Isaiah Pacheco, pass to Travis Kelce. And I think maybe you're right. Maybe he hasn't lost a step. Maybe he's just not healthy. And that's possible. He's also 34 years old. But my big question to the coaching staff for the offensive game plan in this game, because I thought the running game was awesome. I thought that they knew it was going to be a cold, possibly snowy night in Lambeau, so they wanted to run the ball. But how much success did Rashee Rice have last week on wide shallow cross? Like, he had like 4 wide shallow cross catches. One of them he took to the house for 39 yards. I don't think I saw a single wide shallow cross out of Rashee Rice this week. Like, you went straight back to the bubble screen game with him almost predominantly, and it worked to decent effect. But like you have Sky Moore on the franchise saying that Rashee Rice is the wide shallow cross king, and then somebody else saying this kid's juju, right? And then you don't you have great success against the Raiders with it, and then you just go away from it tonight. And so like that's got me that I'm a little spellbound and befuddled by like why we didn't even attempt that at all.
It just it just feels like the coaching staff, it just isn't there with him trust yet, and with like trust wise just yet. And it's so frustrating because it's like, yeah, but like you can see the potential. Like, I understand maybe he's not running all of the right routes. Maybe he doesn't have everything totally memorized in the entire playbook yet. Like, but we see the guys who supposedly are supposed to know all of that stuff run the wrong things all the time too, and make huge mistakes in critical moments of the game. Like, at least he is catching the ball and making plays. Let's at least get him let's let him learn on the fly and grow and develop that way, instead of bringing him along so slow. Because like, I want to make it clear, Rocky, like, obviously it's one loss to an NFC opponent. Like, the AFC still totally up for grabs if the Chiefs can handle business. But things are going to get tougher next week. You get the Buffalo Bills, and the Buffalo Bills are coming off of a bye week, and the Buffalo Bills are playing for their playoff lives right now. So they desperately need this game against the Kansas City Chiefs next week. And I'm interested to see now how the Chiefs show up for that one, because this is 2 games in a row where they've kind of performed in lackluster ways. Last week, it just happened to be against a much inferior team, so they were able to bounce back and get a win. And this young Packers team put it all together tonight. So that game's going to be massive in the AFC, because Buffalo, if they drop that game, there's a strong chance Buffalo's not going to make the playoffs. So they're desperately going to need that one next week against the Kansas City Chiefs. But it's just frustrating getting back to Rashee Rice, because it's not even close anymore. No one in that wide receiver room has shown the type of potential that he has. No, not even close. Like, there's not even anybody you could kind of make a case for. Like, like, oh, we've seen good moments from him. Like, I really like what he's been doing lately. He's been making plays. Like, Justin Watson and MVS are exactly who they are. I think I'd rather see Justin Watson on the field than MVS at this point, because at least Watson will give you something every now and then. And then Sky Moore is just probably shouldn't be on the field. Like, I think I cracked a joke on the Arrowhead Pride podcast that worked a couple of weeks ago when they were talking about bringing Richie James back from IR. And like, it's like, should they deploy him more in the offense? And I was like, I'll be kind of upset if they do that. But now I'm at the point where I'm like, yeah, let's see what they got in Richie James, because Sky's not it either. Like, you just got to see what you got. You brought in all these bodies and you got virtually nothing out of them, including the guys that you brought back from last season. And Rashee Rice is the only one who has shown any kind of potential on a weekly basis, while everybody else continues to hurt you and put you in positions to lose football games. So I don't know what it's going to take. At this point in the season, maybe this is the wake up call. Maybe there's some kind of Rashee Rice play bag they're trying to save for the postseason. But I think they should be developing him in any way they can right now, even if it comes with mistakes, because at least when he's on the field, he's giving you a chance to win, and he's not going to cost you the same way that these other guys are. I think you're frozen, Rocky.
I don't disagree with you at all. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you.
You got me?
Yes.
All right, cool. Awesome. I was frozen for a second. Sorry about that, everybody. I think that honestly, you got 5 games left in the season at this point. What do you have to lose? You know what you have in these wide receivers, and it's not good enough. You know what? Jarvis Landry, Kenny Galladay, Marvin Jones, Philip Dorsett, T.Y. Hilton, they're all sitting on couches somewhere Like, just break out the AARP geriatric wide receiver room, let them run 5 yards at a time, and just try to complete some passes for God's
I
sakes.
think
You
Ty
know,
had a
like,
couple of moments with the Cowboys late last season. Can we see what his legs look like right now?
listen, we got Sammy Watkins out there still ttoo, that's a
No,
free agent.
Sammy was washed
I mean,
last year.
listen, all these guys are washed. I'm not asking them to play a 17 game season, Steven. I'm asking them to play 5 games and maybe some playoffs. And if they get hurt, injury settlement, bring in the next guy. You got a list of like 7 guys, bring in 2 games, get them hurt, 2 more games, and just cycle all the way through, and then just try to limp to the finish line on this thing, because what we have right now, it's not good enough. It's not going to cut it. It's going to be a shame when this defense is so worn down that it starts to falter a little bit down the stretch, and we waste this great defense by having just such a lackluster offense. And the thing about it is that I don't think that Mahomes is suddenly a worse quarterback, because, like you said, he gets the benefit of the doubt. Like, he's done it year in, year out. I don't think that Andy Reid suddenly is a worse play caller. I don't think the league has suddenly figured out the Chiefs. I think that there is a talent deficit in the receiver room, and it's as simple as that. And not to oversimplify things, but it's a very simple problem. Like, you don't have anybody to throw the ball to besides Rashee Rice and Travis Kelsey, and you won't let Rashee Rice run further than 4 yards downfield. So what are you going to do? It's going to be super easy to defend in the passing game.
And when you're trying to stay competitive with the contracts and the veteran players that you have on a Super Bowl caliber roster, like, you're going to have to take some gambles sometimes. And the Chiefs took a gamble by, not offering DeAndre Hopkins a lot more money to be here right now, and saying we've got so many contracts coming up. We need to save the money. We need to focus on the future and the young core and what we're doing and what we're trying to rebuild here. But you're going to have to take some gambles, and that's going to sometimes put you at a deficit and other position groups. And this year it's wide receiver for the Chiefs. Now, all the bodies that they were bringing in and all the hype that was there around the preseason. And I do truly believe, like, the reports that we keep seeing from national media outlets who were talking to Andy Reid and saying, like, they still believe in Sky Moore and they really thought they were going to get so much out of him. Like, I think we have a large enough sample size of Sky Moore to say it just didn't work out. Like, it just did not hit. And MVS probably shouldn't have come back this season. Like, they probably should have cut ties. And Justin Watson, for what he is, I mean, I think you get enough out of him. Like, it's totally justifiable they brought him back on a deal, but that just can't be like a high impact deal for you. Like, that's Justin Watson is a number 4, number 5 wide receiver on your team who can give you something every now and then, but he's not a guy that you want getting a lot of targets. And Kadarius Toney was not involved very much tonight, and I tend to think that that's probably going to be the case moving forward for him, because it seems like the Chiefs don't believe that he can stay on the field. But he's shown enough flashes when he is on the field and healthy that I would have to imagine they are going to seriously manage his snap count moving forward to try to make sure that he stays healthy, the way that they have a player like Jerick McKinnon in past years, and say, we want you for the playoffs because we know we can deploy you. We know you can be a difference maker, and we just need to keep you healthy for that like 3-4 weeks. Other than that, it doesn't really matter if you're on the field for the rest of the regular season, because it kind of seems like that's just how they're treating him now. And this season it hasn't paid off, and the Chiefs are jeopardizing blowing maybe an all-time Kansas City Chiefs defense this year because of that deficit. But sometimes it just doesn't work in your favor. Now, this is still a Super Bowl caliber team, but it feels like they need a lot more things to fall their way than they have in the past, because it's not enough to just say Patrick Mahomes go win us a football game anymore, because it's not on him.
It's not on him. It's not on him at all. And it's honestly, as great as a player he is, it's not really fair to him either to say you have to go out there and be a one-man Michael Jordan in every single game that you ever play for your entire career. You're right. They had to make some gambles in the wide receiver room because of the contracts. the Chris Jones situation is what it is. I think Chris Jones is worth all of his money, but the reason why they weren't able to go out and get a DeAndre Hopkins was because they were completely held hostage by the Chris Jones situation all summer. There was nothing that they couldn't go out and do it because they didn't know what was going on with Chris Jones. They couldn't even try to restructure somebody else, because they didn't know what was going on with Chris Jones. And so they it sucks the way that it played out because you're right. Sky Moore, they just need to cut ties. He's not good enough. And then they ended up with Justin Watson starting, and they're paying Justin Watson fourth or fifth string wide receiver money. Like they're not paying Justin Watson like starting wide receiver money. Like if you look at the contract, they're paying him what he's worth. He's just not worth that much, and they know that. You can reflect how much these players are worth in the Chiefs' eyes by what they're willing to pay them. And it's not a lot aside from MVS. And that was a misjudgment, I think we can say.
Yeah, and it's particularly frustrating, the MVS contract, when you see it seems like the Chiefs are doing a lot of kind of the Patriots type of thing, where it's like, yeah, you come here to win championships, but you got to cut us a break. Like, you got to give us a discount because we got our hands tied. And while I don't think that's always the case, part of that is them trying to be smart and have flexibility here in the future, because they're gonna have to make some tough decisions this offseason. But we know right now this version of the offense isn't good enough to get it done. It certainly wasn't good enough to get it done on Sunday night against the Green Bay Packers. But it's on to next week against the Buffalo Bills. Before we get out of here, I want to remind you guys that if you're listening to us on the podcast page, we'll have all the post-game press conferences immediately available for you after the commercial break. But let's get to a few comments and observations from the listeners before we get out of here. It's a late night, frustrating evening for the Kansas City Chiefs. First one from Colin. Chiefs defense looked like crap the entire game. The receiving corps is weak. Chiefs are going to struggle to go anywhere in the playoffs. Now, I still think that the AFC is totally wide open. Like, I'm not convinced that any team in the AFC playoff picture right now is like a dominant, run away with it playoff contender. But it's because all of those teams are in the NFC. Like, the NFC is just so stacked and top heavy. And like we saw what the 49ers did to the Eagles today, and they just ran them out of the building, but the Eagles are still one of the absolute best rosters in the NFL, and the Cowboys are playing absolutely lights out right now. Like, those teams, I think are the teams that, like, I don't know that the Chiefs could beat any of those teams straight up today when both teams are totally healthy with the way that they're looking recently. But I think that the AFC picture is still wide open if they can just get any kind of more consistent play out of the offense.
Yeah, I mean, the AFC is wide open, and it's part of it's because there's so many injuries at quarterback and so many other offenses that aren't playing up to par themselves this year. You mentioned the Buffalo Bills earlier, like their offense and their defense doesn't look nearly as good as it has in years past. Cincinnati doesn't have Joe Burrow anymore. And so the Chiefs can go on a heater at any point in time and make a run in the playoffs. But I do think that they're going to struggle to get over any NFC team. And I think I think that we've been so spoiled recently that we forgot that, like, going 12-5 or even 11-6 and winning a game in the playoffs and having your season over is still a really good season by NFL standards, right? Like we expect the Super Bowl.
You gotta
We
host
want the
AFC
Super
championship game
every year. If you don't host the AFC championship game or go to the Super Bowl every year, then it's a failure. And that's like I feel the same way, but it's also a good way to set yourself up to be really disappointed if that's the expectation.
Yeah, it's tough, but I still think they've got a chance. I certainly don't think this thing's over. It's official. This is from David. Mahomes is not clutch anymore. If our crap wide receivers don't choke, he chokes. I have little. Okay, I'm just not going to get rid of this, Kramer. I'm just not going to read all of that. That's too much. I disagree with everything you're saying, and I think you're just bearing your soul right now because you're frustrated. But I don't think anybody could watch that game and say that all of that is on Patrick Mahomes. His offensive line didn't play particularly well tonight. Like Mahomes was getting sacked early on in that game. Tackles were having all kinds of pressure with that defensive line. And then in key moments of the game, Mahomes, every week we see it now where he wants to get rid of the ball, but he doesn't have faith that those guys are going to go where he wants to throw the ball, or they just simply aren't getting open. And so he doesn't have anywhere to go with the football. Like it's been the biggest consistency out of anything the Chiefs have done this season is that every single week from their quarterback.
Yeah, just take a deep breath, people. Like first of all, I am as passionate a Chiefs fan as anybody, but it's also just a game. Like I love the Chiefs. I'm super passionate, but deep breaths here. Like it's not like this. The whole season is not in one game right now tonight. And no, Mahomes isn't terrible now. No, Reed's not terrible right now. Yes, I do agree with you, Steven, that the tackles and the offensive line were a problem today. And I think that if we're talking about misallocation of limited resources, that we can start calling into question the Jawan Taylor contract, because that has looked like a pretty much a disaster thus far. 12 games into the season, he's played really poorly this year. Cannot stop getting penalties, and especially now that he can't, quasi not false start before every single play. And so I think that maybe that was a huge miss by Veach. Does that mean that Veach deserves to lose his job and he's a horrible GM? No, he had a miss. Every GM has misses. Every single team has up years and down years. Hall of Fame coaches don't win Super Bowls every single season, right? Like Andy Reid is one of the greatest head coaches of all time, and he has 2 Super Bowl victories, right? And both of those were with the Kansas City Chiefs. The nature of the NFL is to suck the top teams back to the middle of the pack. Like the NFL does not want dynasties. They are designed to limit dynasties from happening and to suck you back down to the middle of the pack when you get too high. That's why they have a salary cap. That's why when you win, you pick last. Everything is designed to bring you back to the middle.
And I think salary cap's also just another reason for them to drastically underpay their players.
Oh,
but
100%. 100%. It's another reason for them to drastically underpay their players and to improve their profit margins. I 100% agree with that.
But all right, it's getting kind of ugly out here in the comments after a tough Chiefs loss on Sunday Night Football to the Green Bay Packers. We've been rambling for over 40 minutes, so I think we got enough of this game out of our system. You can follow Rocky on Twitter at Rocky Magaña. I'm Steven Serda. That's where you can find me. You can follow Kramer at Kramer Talks. Make sure you stay locked into arrowheadpride.com. We'll have everything you need to know following up to this loss to the Green Bay Packers, playoff pictures, injury updates, absolutely everything. And as always, please make sure you subscribe, rate, and review everything that we're doing right here on the Arrowhead Pride Podcast Network. I will be back first thing tomorrow morning chatting with Pete Sweeney on the next edition of the Arrowhead Pride Report. I will talk to you then.